What's up, everyone? Welcome to Among the Fence. My name is Aaron. Today we're checking out the new album Amongst the Low and Empty by the band Signs of the Swarm. This is the fifth studio album from the Pennsylvanian deathcore band since 2014. I gotta admit, they were kind of low on my radar until their last album, Absolver, dropped in 2021, which was absolutely fantastic. A lot has changed since then, though. They recently parted ways with Corey Smarsh and Jacob Toy, who are the guitarist and bass player, due to abuse allegations. And then they brought on Carl Schultz and Michael Cassis, I'm not really sure how to pronounce his last name, to fill in their spots. The singles for this have shown to be a healthy, heavy improvement. Bringing on those different musicians, I'm pretty sure they had a huge part in this album, because I think the other musicians left before Absolver even dropped. It's been good for them. Yeah, it's been really good. The singles were great. I'm not really into singles that much, but the singles for this, I'm really excited for this album. It seems to be a little bit more focused on death metal than just straight up deathcore, which is always kind of nice if you have a little bit less of the core in either your metalcore or deathcore. But either way, I was very excited about this, so let's jump into it. And the album opens up with the title track, which is about experiencing pain and fighting to survive despite feeling hopeless and completely lost. It's got a powerful intro with aggressive drums and vocals. The guitar riff in the background is really technical and it sounds great. Really has its moment to shine in the chorus. Verse 2 has blast beats and a fantastic rhythm. The lyrics are filled with tons and tons of metaphors that point to being into like a pit of just hopelessness. And the outro is absolutely insane. And then we have Tower of Torsos, which is about the protagonist, his desire to basically be a god. And his path is paved with misery. And he's literally building a monument, which is a tower of torsos. And he's not ashamed of it whatsoever. The music does a really good job at portraying the brutality with an old school riff and a very open sounding breakdown, which is basically like the chorus. The vocals are just beautifully mixed. They sound so good. That's probably like the main thing I noticed about this album and the singles is the vocals are they just sound so free. Not even the tone, just in the mix itself, they sound fantastic. And the protagonist seems to he's really okay with all of the destruction that's going on around him to reach his goal, which is a pretty cool take on this story, because a lot of deathcore stuff, it touches on this a little bit. There's stories about this. And this is the first one where it's not starting out with him being miserable. He's just like, yes, you guys, I'm going to destroy everyone for my purpose. Pray for Death has this really cool, like old school death metal meets more modern deathcore sound to it. The vocals, again, stand out to me so freaking much. But this time, due to their tone and just the presentation of them, they're just so demanding, and the drums are competing for your attention as well. And the breakdown has a genty quality to it, which normally I wouldn't care for it all that much, but in deathcore, and also just in a song where you don't really see it coming, it was kind of a pleasant surprise. There's a lot of different transitions once you get to the breakdown as well, and it just seems to be building up into an even heavier breakdown. And then it has a very abrupt stop as it goes straight into the song Borrowed Time that has the same kind of lyrical theme to it. The chorus is really sick because of the vocal layering that's going on. It reminds me a lot of like Fit for an Autopsy stuff that they've been doing lately. It's the most straightforward song in terms of like song structure, which to me, it makes it for a little bit easier listening. It doesn't sound like it's all over the place. It has like, just a standard verse, chorus, bridge, breakdown. And because it comes sort of in the middle-ish of the beginning, it kind of makes it easier for you to keep pushing through the rest of this album, which is kind of crazy. Dreamkiller is definitely my favorite song on this album. They're all great, but this is the one that stood out to me the most and the one I kept going back to with every single listen. I had to listen to it at least one or two more times. It has an eerie lead guitar. The vocals are relentless, but the guitar, especially in the chorus, stands out to me the most. If anything, just for the tone, it just sounds so good. And this song does a really good job at portraying the tragedy of letting your negative thoughts take away your dreams, letting it kill your dreams. And it refers to it as rust, which I think is a pretty cool metaphor, because negative thoughts, they can snowball. This is how I took it. They could snowball, and it's kind of like rust and how rust just spreads. And not only that, but you get rusty as you get older. That's kind of a metaphor for it as well. And the lyrics are very straightforward. They don't hold anything back, speaking directly to himself and the thoughts. I'm sure that there's a deeper meaning to this within the actual whole story of the album, but this is just more of a personal thing that it meant to me. The bridge is absolutely beautiful and it's full of emotion, and the music in this just gets better and better with every listen as well. Then we have the song The Witch Beckons, which is, honestly, it's basically about exactly what it sounds like. The interludes in this song go hard. The bridge is really cool with clean vocals from Matt Heafy, who is from Trivium, for those of you who don't know who he is. And it has just very open drums, letting his vocals breathe, and he sounds so good. And the contrast between the two different vocal styles is absolutely brilliant. Matt's vocals are pushed pretty hard, but it's just a nice change. Like, I mean, they're clean compared to, you know, the growling vocals and the snarling that we've heard so far throughout this album, especially in the outro. Between Fire and Stone is definitely the heaviest song on this album, at least for me. I mean, holy crap. This thing goes so hard. The riff is haunting, super heavy. The drums sound like gunfire. The vocals are like the furthest thing away from sounding like a human as possible. And lyrically, it sounds like his Tower of Torsos has some negative consequences to it. The breakdown is super stompy, and the lyrics are pretty brutal before the breakdown slows down and it gets heavier, and it just doesn't stop going. It just keeps going forever. And then we have the song Shackles Like Talons. It feels very theatrical. Because of that, it feels like it's more story-based, but it doesn't really stop it from having a lot of technicality to it in the riffs and the drums. To me, it's probably the most technical song on this album, really is close to it. The bridge has some like whispered parts to it that, I don't know, it made it sound just, it's just so good. And because of that, it just feels like the story has more of a progression to it. Again, it adds more of a theatrical feel. So it made me, if you ever pay attention to the lyrics, more invested in the story. And it sounds like the protagonist is kind of being spoken to in a sense by someone else about the things that he's done. Like I said, here he's facing some negative consequences for what he's done. And the final chorus and the outro just have so much energy to it as well. And then we have the song Echelon, I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. The vocals in this carry a lot of anguish to them. You can really feel it. The post-chorus is full of blast beats. It sounds great. The first half of this song is super intense. Because of that, it's a little hard to feel comfortable. It's a little hard to feel like you have any footing within this song until you get to the back half, which gets really groovy. Again, it sounds great, but then there's a break and it goes back into chaos where there's like this distorted, staticky vocal part that just adds more depth to the song and the story as well. And then we have the song Faces Without Names, where the drums seem to be the main focal point of this song. Sure, the guitar work is doing a lot of stuff and it sounds great, but the drums are just so powerful, especially in the mix. I feel like this song is about seeing apparitions that are basically making the protagonist go crazy, or it's a little bit more, I guess, realistic within the story, and it's dragging his dead body off. The outro is it's pretty epic, but it's a little different. I didn't really see it coming, and again, it's more story-based, where it makes it feel like this thing is coming to a climax and or a close. And that brings us to the closing track, where the story, lyrically and musically, is completed. There's a lot of dissonance from the guitars. Again, it makes it a little uncomfortable, hard to feel like you can settle in somewhere. The chorus has a really strong rhythm to it that's sure to get the pit going. There's a lot of different sounds going on, but like I said before, musically, it definitely sounds like it's coming to a close. The outro is basically the perfect soundtrack to this brutal, brutal story. It makes for a perfect closer. I absolutely love this album. This thing is so good. As far as I'm concerned, this is like a top tier deathcore album, at least in my eyes. I love Fit for Autopsy, favorite deathcore band. Shadow of Intent, also a favorite as well. But this album, I feel like it just pushes Signs of Swarm right up there with those guys. If anything alone, just for the mix. I mean, just really pay attention to the vocals and the drums and the guitars in this thing, because they do different stuff throughout different songs. And it just makes the songs hit a little bit differently. And because of that, I feel like the songwriting is a lot more creative. The story is a different take on something that we've heard so many times before. So that makes it a little bit more interesting, especially if you're into lyrics and, you know, trying to figure out what this thing is about. To me, that makes it stand out more, and it made it a little bit more enjoyable for me. I just wanted to see where it was going to go and what was going to happen. The synth stuff they do is probably one of the only issues I have with this thing. It kind of just does the same thing. The little shudders and little breakups and skips that they do throughout this, where it happens probably about 4 to 5 times throughout the entire album. The first time, I mean, it sounds cool, but then every time they do it's just the same thing. So it makes it a little less impactful and a little bit more predictable, but it's, I don't know, it's very minuscule as far as I'm concerned. So with all that said, I gotta give Amongst the Low and Empty by Signs of the Swarm a 8.6 out of 10. But I want to know what you guys think. If you listened to Amongst the Low and the Empty, leave a comment below letting me know what you thought of it, what you would rate it, and what your favorite song is. And if you haven't listened to it yet, I implore you to, because it is great. It will change your life. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like. If you want to help support me and my channel, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell icon. Doing any of that stuff helps me out tremendously. And I just thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to sit here and listen to me talk about music. And I hope you have a good rest of your day or night whenever you have me watching this. And I will talk to you guys next time.
I was just an ignorant kid relying on my parents' said to save me.